it's the weekend and I am just craving like a really indulgent Sunday dinner tomorrow. So I have chosen to use Gordon Ramsay's cookbook. What is this called? Oh yeah, Ultimate Cookery Course, which I have used before because his famous beef Wellington recipe is in here, which basically if you ever want to make a beef Wellington, don't bother with any other recipe, just use Gordon Ramsay's. He has a really good YouTube video for that, so please go and check that out. But I haven't really delved into any of the other recipes, so I thought, why not? This weekend is the weekend for that. So we're gonna try the slow braised stuffed lamb breast. I had lamb breast in a hotel a few weeks ago and it was a bit of a disappointment because they didn't really render the fat down. I don't think they really slow cooked it. So this bit here was kind of chewy and a bit unpleasant to eat. So I thought at the time, I was like, I wonder how I'd be able to eat that at home. So this looks like a really good recipe, but we're going to find out. So I've got all my ingredients out here. I have literally just been to the butcher to get this. This is a lamb breast that has been deboned, so I asked them to remove the bones at the butcher. So you can kind of see that this lovely meaty bit is going to be really, really tender because all of this fat will render down. This is kind of the breast bit, and this is the bit that can be a bit tough if you don't cook it properly. So that's why we need to make sure it's really, really well, slowly cooked. But the recipe is quite interesting because you fill this bit here with, we've got oregano, anchovies, lemon zest, chili pepper flakes, obviously salt and pepper, and that just makes for the most delicious filling. So I'm actually really interested to see how this turns out. I'm gonna stuff it today. I'll just move that out of the way. I'm gonna stuff it today, and we actually don't need a knife for this. And we're gonna cook it tomorrow. We're gonna slow cook it tomorrow. But the recipe actually says to try and stuff the breasts a day ahead, as it helps to tenderize the meat more. So I thought, in the interest of the channel, we'll see what the recipe says and do that. This cut is actually too big for my quite large chopping board, so we're just going to make the best of that. So first of all, season with salt on both sides. So I'm going to be quite generous here just because kosher salt is, the salt flakes absorb a lot better, and I also think it'll just be so tasty if we get quite a lot of flavour in there first up instead of me adding it later on. Hoping this just renders down into like the crispiest skin on the outside. Oh great. My knife is the dirtiest ever. Rub that in. And then we're gonna have some oregano and chili flakes and the zest of 2 lemons before we spread the anchovies out. So I'll do that and then we'll see how the wrapping process works, because I'm usually not really into these like fatty recipes, but I was just really interested to see how that would work. Also, if we're worried about expensive cuts of meat or anything like that, just as a reference point, I went into the butcher and I had to ask for this specifically. It wasn't out on display or anything. You can sometimes be really unlucky and they just won't have what you need for a recipe. I'm very lucky. I live very close by to a really, really good butcher. And I asked for the bones to be removed, so that obviously decreases the weight if your butcher is doing things like that. And this whole thing came to £6.60, which is, I think, is great for a Sunday roast dinner. I think what is worth knowing is that I'm kind of dividing this recipe by 3. The whole recipe feeds 6. I don't need that amount, so I'm actually making it only for 2, so I've just divided the ingredients appropriately. The mixture of the oregano and the lemon is always such a winner for me. So vibrant, so summery. I also think that lemon is such a summery meat as well. I know it's actually more associated with Easter, and my mum always does lamb at Easter, but I just think this is so, it just reminds me of like holidays abroad when they used to have these like big lamb skewers with the flatbreads. Delicious. Right, so that's the lemon and the herbs and the salt and pepper done. Now to the fun bit, because I'm going to do the anchovies. So I've got 1 jar, which is just over 95 grams. I'm gonna get a spoon because this is gonna be really messy. And we're just gonna lay them as evenly as possible. I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. We're gonna roll this up anyway. Oopsies. Also, if you're a bit like ugh about anchovies, I was one of those people. I had no faith in anchovies whatsoever. I'm not, just the smell of them really puts me off sometimes, and I hated the idea of putting like a whole fish in my mouth at once, like that had not been deboned. I would say my recommendation, if you want to be like an anchovy lover, you know, it's a bit like olives, like they're such a grown-up flavour to like. My recommendation would be to find a pasta recipe that uses anchovies in the first few stages, so like frying them off with the onions and the garlic, and use that first, because that really got me onto anchovies as like a flavour booster. There's an amazing ottolenghi recipe with aubergines. He says that starting at the smaller end of the meat, roll each breast into a tight sausage shape and tie at intervals of string. So we're gonna roll from here, roll, and then, as we all know, I hate using string in the kitchen, so I have some, and I also couldn't get any as well in time for this, so I have some skewers and we'll try and secure it with that. I might have to cut them to make it a bit shorter, but that's okay, we can do that. That looks like such a juicy wrap. I'm just going to secure it here first. And here. So this outer section is quite tough. And like I said, that's what we're going to render down when we initially pop that in the pan tomorrow. I'm going to cut these because when I put it in the pan, I want as much of that to hit the pan as possible. Please don't hate yourself when you do this. Okay, great. I'm going to cut those and then we're going to put that in the fridge. Okay, so just to show you, looks a bit graphic, but that's with all the stuffing in, and that will make such a great slow roast tomorrow. So we're going to come back in 24 hours and cook this puppy. The next day I took the wrapped lamb breast out of the fridge, and I can't tell you how amazing it smelled. Those flavours had really had time to just meld with the meat, get to know each other a bit. That lemon zest was really, really strong, and it really had a chance to make sure it had marinated in with the fat of the meat as well. So the first stage of the next day is making sure that we cook off the meat and brown it on all the sides. So this is just me in the biggest casserole dish I have, making sure that I can just add some colour to the outside of the meat there. We're not wanting to cook it all the way through, that would literally take us all day, but it's just about getting some browning on the outside, and this just stops it toughening up when we actually add it to the liquid in a second. So this next stage of the recipe is about making that sort of braising stock for the liquid to slow roast in all day and really just like give it a bath to basically braise in all day. So what I'm doing here is adding some colour, we'll take it out, and then now it's time to make that liquid. So here I am with some onion and garlic. I don't need to add any oil here, I don't need to add any fat. Enough fat has rendered out of the lamb to make that smell really, really delicious. And it's a good base to cook that onion and garlic in. I also didn't need to break up the garlic too much. It literally was just 3 crushed cloves of garlic there. And you can see it colours up really quickly. Obviously I have sped this up, but it colours up really, really quickly. So next I just go in with a sprinkle of oregano and a few of the, salt and pepper, and just make sure that we've got some flavourings in there. Again, you have to be quite quick with this. I didn't want to get the onions catching on the bottom of the pan. So always turning it, always making sure that I'm keeping an eye on that. And then just follow up with some lemon zest. Again, guys, I cannot tell you how amazing this smelt. The whole kitchen just smelt so delicious. Follow up with some capers. This is where it started to really come into its own. It started to really have that like really unique Mediterranean smell. I also added some olives here according to the recipe. So just some Kalamata olives, just out of the jar, not pitted. I actually, this is quite a controversial opinion, but I really don't like olives. So I was a bit wary about this one, but it's one of those things that, say in a puttanesca or something, I actually really like the taste that olives bring to a dish. I just don't really like the taste of, I wouldn't try them as a bar snack. So I was trusty enough in Gordon Ramsay's recipe to add them here, and I knew that they would bring a nice flavour. Again, we're just cooking them off a bit here, making sure that they really blend well with the onions and the garlic, and they're just giving some aromatics here. Then we're going to go in with some dry white wine and just let that bubble up a little bit. Here you can kind of deglaze the pan, so you see I actually kind of like scrape along the bottom of the surface of the pan. The casserole dish I use here is a Pro Cook one, and it's really good for this sort of thing because it kind of takes a beating. I've used this for all sorts of things. I use it for curries, I use it for stews, stocks, roasting. I've even used it to bake bread, and to be honest, it really stands the test of time. So don't feel bad if you're like really scraping the bottom to get up those all like lovely juicy meaty bits, because that's what you want to do here when you're pouring that alcohol in. I let that bubble up, and I see if I can just get some really good flavours building up here. I then go in with some tinned tomatoes, and I just top that up with a little bit of water as well, just so I can make sure I get all the tomatoey goodness from the can. And you can really see that begins to really bubble up here as well. I'll get that to boiling, and I just let that boil for about 5 to 10 minutes. Obviously, guys, I have sped this up. I haven't done this actually in like 3 minutes. I add some salt here as well, just to offset the acid of the tomatoes. And then I go in with my meat. I also just make sure that I move it around, make sure that it's actually touched the meat at all points. And I baste that braising liquid over the meat as well, just to make sure that when we do go in the oven, it has sort of like been covered by the liquid. I'm going to go into the oven at 170 degrees for at least 2 hours. 2.5 hours is the recommended time. We can check at 2 hours and then see how it does. So this was 2.5 hours later, and you can see it's really reduced down. I also kept opening the oven every half an hour, every 45 minutes, just to make sure that we could really turn the meat around and give that liquid a base and a mix. So this is me just cutting into it. I served this with some potatoes, some greens, just like a really nice chilled summer roast dinner, and it was absolutely delicious. What I would say is my boyfriend really enjoyed this, and he went back for seconds. I enjoyed this, and the lamb that I did eat was delicious, and it was really flavourful. You could really get that sort of salty taste coming in from the seasonings that we put on the day before. I would say that I really wish I'd roasted it a little bit longer, just to my taste. I wish that it had been a little bit tenderer. I think that some of the fat was still kind of lingering around, and I think some people who eat lamb really prefer it that way, but I think for my taste I just would have liked it to be a little bit more broken down. The bits that I had, so you can kind of see those bits on the left that are broken off, those literally just fell apart. They didn't even need to be broken up with a knife, really. I kind of just tore them apart with the tongs, and those bits were so delicious, and you could really tell that they were on the outside because they just didn't need any work whatsoever. And I actually had a few cheeky bits when I was breaking this up on the chopping board. But all in all, a really good recipe, and definitely something that I would try again, but just with a few little tweaks. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and add any comments for recipes you'd like to see me try. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.